Okay, so here is our Unit 3 Part 2 review. Now this is page 2. If you have not reviewed page 1, you may want to go back and do that one first. This one is going to cover numbers 4, 5, and 6. Same idea as the last video. We have a couple of different things that we need to answer as we move through the question. Number 4 says George is making 8 gallons of tropical trip punch. He has already poured in 1 3/4 gallons of pineapple juice and 2 1/2 gallons of orange juice. The only other ingredient is 7-Up. How much 7-Up does George need? Let's focus on the important information. We've got 8 gallons that he's going to be making. He has already poured in the 1 3/4 gallons of pineapple and 2 1/2 gallons of orange juice. We're looking for what he needs left, is which are 7-Up, and we're looking for how much 7-Up does he need. So what does that equation look like? Well, I'm going to start with what I already know. I know that I have 1 3/4 pineapple. I know that I'm going to add that to my other juice that already went in, 2 1/2. But when I find that information, I'm going to have to subtract it from the 8 gallons to find out how much 7-Up. So I'm going to isolate this information by putting parentheses around it, which will, number 1, tell me I have to do that first, but also number 2, not to confuse in which order, because we don't want to have 8 subtracting the 1 3/4. Estimation. My 8 I'll leave as is, but let's look at 1 3/4. So again, think 1 3/4, that would be 3 shaded out of 4, which is closer to 2 than 1, plus 2 1/2. Remember, that's right in the middle, so it's going to actually round to 3, which, parentheses first, 2 plus 3 is 5, 8 minus 5 is 3. So our answer should be around the area of 3. Okay, so let's actually do the work. In my parentheses, I have 1 3/4, but I'm going to make that a decimal. 3/4 is a benchmark. I know that that's 75/100ths. Plus 2 1/2 is also a benchmark. A half is 2/5. Remember, in our order of operations, we need to focus on this one first. So that's 1 75/100ths plus 2 5/10ths. Remember, when we are doing decimals, adding or subtracting, we need to line up the decimals like buttons on a shirt, make them look the same. We add zeros if needed, and then add. 5 plus 0 is 5, 7 plus 5 is 12, 1 plus 1 plus 2 is 4. So my answer to this part is 4 25/100ths. Bring down everything I did not use. Now I'm just looking at 8 minus 4 25/100ths. So set it up, 8, and you have to think, okay, I have a whole number. Where's the decimal? The decimal is right here after the 8. That's how we know it's a whole number. Line up the decimals. I already added the zeros that were needed, and now we're going to subtract. And don't forget your decimal. So my answer is I'm going to need 3 75/100ths gallons of 7-Up. Number 5. Julie bought 15 party hats priced at 3 for 65 cents and 56 noisemakers priced at 7 for $1.25. What is the total cost of the hats and noisemakers, not including tax? Okay, so let's first focus on what's important. We're going to buy 15 party hats, but they're not individually priced. They're priced in a group. It's 3 for 65 cents. I need 56 noisemakers, but they're also priced in a group. it's 7 for 125. So I don't really need 56 individual. I need to figure out how many groups I need so that I get the 56 individual. I'm looking for the total cost of the hats and noisemakers. Okay, so I mentioned we've got a grouping thing going on. We've got 15 party hats, but they're grouped. So if they're grouped in threes, I need 3, which is one group. 6, so that means I'd buy 2 groups. And so I'm going to go to 15. Well, you should find that it's 5 groups, or like if they're in a package of 3, I need 5 packages, because 5 times 3 gives me that 15 individual party hats. And they said that that was 65 cents each. I'm going to add that to the total of the 56 noisemakers. But again, the 56 noisemakers, it's not individual. They're grouped. Like imagine a baggie. They've got 7 in each bag. So you've got to figure out, well, how many bags do I need? Because I'm not buying 56, because then I'm going to have way more than I need. So I need to think, okay, if I've got 7 in one bag, that's 7 noisemakers. Then I buy a second bag, that gives me 14 noisemakers. So I keep counting, and I realize that if I buy 8 bags, that's going to give me 56 individual noisemakers. So I'm going to multiply that by my $1.25. So if we're looking at rounding, 5 times 65 cents. Well, 65 cents is pretty close to $1. It's a lot closer than it is to 0. So that would be $5. Add it to 8 times 125. Well, again, $1.25 is closer to $1 than $2. So I'm going to be spending somewhere around $13. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. We'll figure that out. Okay. So how do I do my work? So I'm going to do 5 times 65 cents. I'm going to put an X right here so that we can differentiate between that and the decimal. Gets a little difficult. And then 8 times 125. Order of operations at work. We're looking at this one first. So that is going to be 65 times 5, multiply, move that decimal over, move it over here. That means for the party hats, I'm going to spend $3.25. Bring down everything you have not used. Now I'm going to do the next parentheses. $1.25 times 8. 8 times 5 is 40, 16, 20, 8, 10, decimal over, decimal over. So I've spent $10 just for the noisemakers. Bring down everything you have not used. Now I'm going to look at $3.25 plus $10. I know that is $13.25, and I have my answer. So my answer is I spent $13.25 total for the hats and noisemakers. Okay, number 6. Carla is baking chocolate cupcakes. Each batch of 20 cupcakes requires 2/3 of a cup of cocoa. If Carla has 2 3/4 cups of cocoa, how many full batches of cupcakes will she be able to make? So let's go through and mark what's important. 2/3 of a cup of cocoa is important. 2 3/4 cups of cocoa total is important. How many full batches? So this information with the 20 cupcakes just kind of tells you how many batches that they're making. It's really not pertinent to the question because we're going to figure out how many batches she's going to make. So you have to think, I've got a total amount of cocoa. I've got a big old thing of cocoa, and I'm going to take 2/3 of a cup and I'm going to have 1 batch. I'm going to have another 2/3 of a cup. I'm going to make another batch. Well, I'm splitting up the cocoa. So if I'm splitting, I am dividing. So how do we set that up? We're going to take 2 3/4 cups of cocoa, and we are going to split it up into 2/3. For our estimation, 2 3/4, okay, think about 3 shaded out of 4. That's going to get me closer to 3. And 2/3, again, 2 out of 3 shaded, that gets me awfully close to 1. Certainly closer to 1 than 0. Well, 3 divided by 1 is 3. So we can expect at least 3 batches, maybe a little bit more. So let's see how we set this up. 2 3/4 divided by 2/3. Well, again, we need to get rid of the mixed number. Lasso, multiply, add. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 is 11. Denominator stays the same. Divide. 2/3 does not need to be changed because it is not a mixed fraction. Now, think about when we divide fractions, we keep the first the same, flip the second, and multiply. So I'm looking for any way to reduce at first, but I have a 3 and a 4. No number other than 1 is going to go into either one. Same thing with 11 and 2. So in this case, I cannot reduce ahead of time. So now I'm just going to multiply the top times the top and the bottom times the bottom, which gives me 33/8. That is an improper fraction. I need to get it out of the improper. Divide. 8 does not go into 3, but it does go into 32 4 times. 4 times 8 is 32. I'm left with 4 1/8. Okay, so let's go back up into my question though. It said how many full batches? Well, remember the 4 is going to be my full batches. My 1/8 is my leftover. Those are those cookies you get to eat. So my answer, if I'm going to answer my question correctly, is I need to answer with 4 full batches. Because if I said 4 1/8, I'm including a partial that is not a full batch. So make sure you are reading and answering the question. Okay. If you, this was 4, 5, and 6. The next video will be the next page. I think it's 7, 8, and 9.